Hello, my name is Sarah, and I'm going to be introducing our Cockroach project presentation today. So, our presentation and our project is called Cone Training, the effect of different colors of primary light on the movement of discoid cockroaches. You can see all the people in our group, and they'll be popping up at different points during this presentation today to explain different parts of our project. So just to start with a brief introduction, what our project is going to look like, and some background information to help you understand. So our research question that we're going to be going over is, what effect do the primary colors of light, green, blue, and red, have on the rate of discoid cockroach movement over a constant period of time? All right, so we're going to be focusing on what those impacts are, what the impacts of the primary colors are on their movement. So do they move more? Are they more stationary? How far do they move? But of course, we'll get more into how we're going to measure that later on in the presentation. So our hypothesis, we'll explain why we think that in just a moment, but our hypothesis is that when faced with the blue and green light, the cockroaches will scatter, yet when they're faced with the red light, they will not change their behavior. And we'll be sure to explain more on why we think that. So of course, the null hypothesis there would be that their rate of movement will be the same for all colors. So a little bit about why we got to that hypothesis is based on some past research in color and specifically color light. So it's been shown that green and blue light do decrease melatonin production, and that also changes alertness and cognition in a study with humans. So we want to see, does that carry on to cockroaches, and also, as we'll get into in a moment, their color recognition. When it comes to red light, oftentimes when I personally think of red light, I think of going out at night with like a red flashlight or a red headlamp to make sure that I don't alert any bugs or insects around me. Red light is also known to demonstrate sleep-inducing effects in mice, changing both duration and number of times that they slept throughout the study. And so because of that, we think that that red light has a more calming effect, whereas the green and blue light seem to have more of a alertness causing effect. So that's why we think that with the green and blue light, they'll move around a lot more, but with the red light, they might not move as much. They'll be a little bit more stationary. When it comes to the eyes of discoid cockroaches and how they see, they do have simple eyes or ocelli that allows them to detect the changes in light around them and the intensity of that light. And in a study in light intensity, when they were presented with that bright light, they were seen to burrow more often. As we know, discoid cockroaches are nocturnal, but those internal clocks allow them to know, not just based on the light around them, but based on they know that time of day, and so that's how they're able to know when it's nighttime or when it's daytime for them. And so it isn't based entirely on light intensity, but we do know that they have a way to understand that and to see that, and that when they are faced with brighter lights, they do tend to have a reaction to that. When it comes to our study, and we'll go more into this later, we are planning to do this primarily at night so that way they can be as alert and as awake as possible, as to not skew any of our data into being a little bit more calm, just because it would be nighttime for them. Now, when it comes to some of the expansion on the research that we've already found, or this little snippet of research that we already found, we want to know with that green and blue light, since we know it has that effect on humans, we want to know, does it have that same effect on cockroaches? Can they see that color? And that's something we'll expand on in just a moment. When it comes to the red light, like I said, we know that it induces sleep and calming effects in mice. So same thing, does it have that same effect on cockroaches or not? And when it comes to light, we know that they have that recognition of light and the light intensity, but we want to know, do they have that recognition of colors? All sorts of different animals have very different levels of color recognition. There are other animals that can likely see more color than us or less color than us. So how does that compare to the discoid cockroaches and their perception of these different colors? And how does that affect their reactions? Thank you so much.
Okay, so some more background information on this topic. We're able to find that cockroaches have a circadian rhythm opposite to that of humans. This pretty much just means that they're on the opposite schedule of us. So how we are going to be active during the day, sleep during the night, they're the opposite. So they're going to be most active during dusk to dawn. When that sun comes up, they're like, oh, it's bedtime. Let's burrow and go to sleep, you know? Um, so the amount of activity that they show is going to vary by the species, but most commonly, you're going to find more cockroaches active and out and about during the night and not as much during the day. Study that we focused on was our light intensity study. So this involved locomotion with different levels of light. They did find that even with this low light, they were still sensitive, which just kind of furthers that idea and finding that they are nocturnal. Um, but because they found this, we can infer that they're not only going to be more comfortable in the lower lights compared to a bright, like intense light, but it gives us more of an insight as to how they may react differently to a light that resembles moonlight compared to more of an ambient light. Um, and then how our study adds to the light intensity study. So obviously our study is on night, so that plays into it. But also, um, we are going to add the addition of not only seeing how they react to a non-natural light, an ambient light that may resemble more sunlight daytime when they wouldn't be active, that what they want to try to get out of. But we're also adding color to it. So this can there's lights that resemble more moonlight that you would see that animals can pick up as being dusk to dawn, compared to colors that are going to be more resembling to daylight. So not only the intensity of the light, but the color as well will give us more of an idea of what these cockroaches' limits are, and what their behavior is as far as their circadian rhythm. Aspect of the design that adds to the study of light of cockroaches in general is the fact that they're using more than one color. So, again, just back to the whole some colors resemble night, some colors resemble day, and seeing what they would prefer, what they'd be more active in, and what they're going to take as, oh, it's time to burrow, or even not necessarily that, but scatter, what may confuse them. Um, So light research with discoid cockroaches specifically. Really cool thing is that there has not been a lot of research regarding discoid cockroaches. And because of that, there's a lot of other focuses that are more important right off the bat. They already established that they were nocturnal, so why even focus on the different colored lights? So we will be adding to that. Um, so we think that this is going to expand on the findings of other research, specifically the light intensity research. And then we expect to find that the discoid cockroaches are going to respond similar to the ambient light of the room in our control group E. Um, so we do have a control group, and then we have our lights that resemble day, lights that resemble night, and we do feel that the lights such as blue that are going to give those daytime, get the levels more running and stuff, like it does in humans, which is why you're not supposed to go on your phone before you go to sleep, um, are going to create more of a reactivity as far as scattering, trying to get out of that light compared to a blue light that we hypothesize will be more of a less triggering factor for them. Um, and it'll be interesting to see because they are on the circadian rhythm. It's not necessarily just putting them in light during the day, putting them at dark during the night that's going to switch them over to the schedule. It takes a lot more than that. So it'll be interesting to see how we are able to, what we're able to figure out as far as what gets them moving.
Hello, my name is Will France, and I will be discussing our methods we will use in this experiment. So just a little refresher, our hypothesis is when faced with the blue and green light, the cockroaches will scatter, yet when faced with the red light, they will not change their behavior. And our null hypothesis is the rate of the cockroach movement will be the same for all colors of light, red, blue, and green. So first, sample size. The sample size for this study will be 5 adult female discoid cockroaches, lettered accordingly A, B, C, D, and E, with E being the control. There will be no infants involved in our research process, however, some might appear at any given moment. So, collecting data. The data we will collect is both the rate and distance traveled by the cockroaches when exposed to the various colors of light. The distance traveled by the cockroaches will be measured from a point in the middle of the Lego arena we will make for them. The arena will be made out of colored Legos. To remedy the reaction of the cockroaches to these colors, we will line the arena with white printer paper to reduce the amount of excess color the cockroaches are exposed to during the trials. We will expose each cockroach A, B, C, and D to each color of light and measure the distance they moved from the center of the arena. We will then take those distances and average them to obtain the mean distance traveled by the cockroaches in our experimental sample size of 4. The control cockroach E will be exposed to normal ambient light and have its movement and distance traveled measured in the same way as the others. In addition, we will also obtain the rate of movement speed of each cockroach by dividing the distance by the time it takes to run the trial. We will shine the varying colors of light, red, green, and blue, on the cockroaches for 30-second increments with a 2-minute rest in between each trial. This 2-minute rest ensures that the cockroaches don't have residual effect from the last trial going into the new trial.
Hello everyone, my name is Vanessa Navani and I am going to be continuing and completing our methods section of our presentation. So I will be going over how we're collecting data, why we're collecting data, and why we chose the things we did. So our plan is to collect data twice a week for each type of light. That is a total of 6 trials per cockroach. As of right now, we're doing 3 different colors of light. So there will be 2 trials for each color of light per cockroach per week. So just like every experiment, there are different variables that are measured. So here are ours. We are measuring time in seconds, and this is going to allow us to assess speed at a basic level. And then we're going to be measuring distance in centimeters, and this is going to allow us to measure the distance the cockroach feels is comfortable away from the light source. And we chose centimeters rather than something like inches because we're not too sure how the cockroaches are going to react quite yet. So we wanted to start something where we could at least get a little bit of data, even if they move only a little bit. So we are also going to be measuring speed in centimeters per second, and this is going to allow us to have an actual coefficient to convey the speed of cockroaches and their response to each color of light. So, because cockroaches are nocturnal creatures by nature, we're going to be collecting data when they're most active, and this is when the sun sets around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and this is important because we don't want to do our experiment when they are not quite awake, not quite ready to do what they would usually do. And having the cockroaches be at an alert state is essential for the accuracy of our experiment because if they're not, we might not get the results that we would typically get if we were doing it later in the night. So we are having some statistical tests. So we are having one cockroach E be exposed to nothing by ambient light and measuring the distance that cockroach E travels to from the center of the arena. And then we are going to compare the experimental cockroaches, which is A through D, to cockroach E, which should move at a normal rate under the ambient light of the lab space. So cockroaches A through D are going to be exposed to red, green, and blue light. So this test is appropriate for the data we will collect because it will distinctly show whether the cockroaches that are exposed to different colors of light have a different reaction than that of cockroach E, which is the ambient light cockroach. Cockroach E will only be exposed to the ambient light of the room in which the cockroaches live. So the light that we have in our lab space is the only light that cockroach E is going to get. And because of this disparity between the control and experimental groups, we will know for sure, both by the data that we collect and by the observations that we have gathered, whether colored light affects the rate of movement and distance traveled by female discoid cockroaches.
Okay, I'm going to be talking about broader implications of the cockroach proposal. So you may wonder, why does this matter? Well, there's very little research on these types of cockroaches compared to other species of cockroaches. Um, so the more that we get to know about them, the more that we can understand these creatures. Um, our research on the cockroaches' response to light could inspire others to conduct more experiments like ours, and not only on cockroaches, but that could open doors to many other insects. And what will these results tell us? Well, if our hypothesis is correct, it will tell us that these cockroaches respond to different colors of light in different ways. Um, and we think this is significant not only because it provides information about how these cockroaches interact between different lights, but it can also tell us how it could apply to other insect species as well. Now, you're thinking, cockroaches. Why even ask about this? Well, I think that we should ask ourselves this question because in the wild, the cockroaches are not directly exposed to concentrated colors of light. Therefore, we cannot observe their response to those colors in the wild. By observing this in a controlled environment, we can learn more about the natural aversions to light in general and whether those aversions are color dependent. So I think that it would be really interesting to see how these cockroaches have a connection or have a response to these colors because we don't know much about these cockroaches and we don't know how they'll react to this light. So I think that it would be really interesting to see the difference between these cockroaches and how they differentiate with the lights. And this is our works cited. Thank you.